Okay, let's see. Is that working? Yes. Okay. Greetings to one and all. It's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another episode of Countermeasures Jay Play. Now, yesterday I finally finished God of War Ragnarok. It's taken me about 4 years to get to it. Oh gosh. And yeah, I did really enjoy it, etc., etc. But I made a review, and the whole time I did the review, of course, my mic was muted. So that is just something that happens sometimes, especially if you're me and you have technical difficulties. So then I just thought, oh, well, I'll just fire up God of War, and then I'll just do a quick kind of 10-minute sort of roundup, a recap, which is what this is. Then I realized I deleted it from my hard drive, and I didn't want to download the massive files again just to do the review. So then I thought, well, I'll just find a game that has a pause screen with virtually no sound in the background, of which I've just been through about 4 or 5 of them, like Ark Raiders, Chronos: The New Dawn, like all of those games. Their pause screens or their home screens just have music or too much noise, too much background noise going on. So then I finally settled on Battlefield 6, which is what this is, and we're now in the campaign, which I completely stopped playing because it was crap. And we're in the pause menu. So yeah, it's not really the best setup or what I ideally like to do. And I probably should spend some time kind of crafting a better solution. But the truth is that I'm not going to bother doing that. I'm just going to do the review for God of War on this screen. So ignore what you're seeing here and obviously just listen to my dulcet tones. Now, just to go through the cliff notes of what I talked about yesterday about God of War, which is that I did really enjoy playing that game. I thought that it wasn't as good as the first one in terms of story. I really liked the story of the first one where you're scattering ashes. This one was a little bit more disjointed for me. They tried to include a lot more lore in the storytelling. Obviously, Ragnarok is a huge story in the in that kind of mythos. It has so many different elements and so many different characters. And in a way, trying to include all of it in one game, I feel just kind of felt really bloated. And they're talking about characters that are on, some of these characters are in the whole thing, like Fenrir and all of these guys. And then some of them are just in it for a few moments. And there's no real reason for them to be those characters other than they want to connect to the lore. And it just kept expanding to the point where I'm fighting some huge character that's from this sort of legendary mythical story of Ragnarok. And I've got no idea who it is. I've got no idea what the connection to the story is. So it sort of lost me a little bit when it came to the storytelling. But the actual core of the story, which is, the first one is about Kratos reconnecting with his son after his wife dies. In the second one, it's more about him living and dealing with having a teenager in the house, if you like, and also what that means for him sort of growing up. And spoilers, if you haven't played it, which you should have done, because I think I'm the last person on earth that hasn't played it or has now. He eventually kind of finds his own way and goes off to find his own path. So that was an interesting part of the story. Everything else that was surrounding it, I kind of just felt was a little bit too much. There's new characters being introduced all the time. There's new mechanics being introduced all the time. I like the simplicity of Kratos, his son, the core main characters, and then you've got like Freya and Brock and or Sindri and all of those characters that have come back from the first one, which I like seeing the development of them. And there was a lot more story surrounding them this time, which I did also like. But then they're kind of tagging in like Ratagaska, who's like this talking squirrel, and then they've got like Tia, and they've got and there's just more and more and more, and it just keeps layering. And Heimdall, and and introducing these characters as kind of like boss fights and whatever is interesting. But in some of the lore that they just kept layering, I wasn't so mad about it. So story wise, it wasn't as good as the first one. I still liked it, but it wasn't as good as the first one. Voice acting's obviously amazing. Mocap, obviously amazing. The visuals, obviously amazing. I mean, it's all just an extension of the first one, which still looks brilliant when you play it today. I don't know how they improved on it, but they did. Really, really excellent graphics, really excellent gameplay. I think I was playing at like 120 or 60 FPS. No, I think it was 60 FPS, and then I put it in uh I didn't put it in the most pretty mode. I put it in the performance, and it was amazing. So I didn't really see any difference when I switched between the two. Just when I was testing it at the start, um, just really, really great. Obviously, that's a given. The mechanics of the weapons excellent. The mechanics of the RPG elements they've started introducing in terms of building up your character, getting your skill, becoming more skill based in certain areas, allowing your assistant side character, so like Atreus and Freya, to have their own. Um, uh, they did before, but like sort of develop more of their skills, so and they can have different outfits and all that kind of stuff, and then Kratos having sort of weapons that then you can sort of build upon their skills of what they do, which again was started in the first one and really refined here. So I liked all of that. Yeah, I mean, it was good. I do feel like it started relatively slowly. The first few hours are a bit slow. It's a bit kind of like you're having the control taken away from you, so you're just sitting watching this thing happen, and every now and again you're moving left and pushing forward for a couple of minutes. Then it kicks into another cutscene. So I kind of felt like the setup wasn't as interesting as the first one. Straight away you're fighting Boulder, is it? Right at the start of the first one, which is which is probably one of the best fights in the whole series. And that's literally the first thing you do in the first 10 minutes of that game. So there was a little bit of that of the second one that I felt was lacking, and it ran a little bit slow. Then it really picks up the pace, and you start getting the story, and you go back to visit Midgard, which has all been completely frozen over. Before you were in your boat and going around and whatever, and this time you're on a sledge. You've got the dogs, and you've got your wolves or whatever, and there's all of that going on, which is really great and a real good development of the vehicular side of things for that game. And also putting everything in the snow always looks excellent. It's the Empire Strikes Back to Star Wars. It's always going to have that kind of feeling of a sort of a move on. And also it was great seeing sort of places like Midgard where you've been before in the first game, but now they're frozen over and there's different ways to get to different parts that you couldn't before. And there's like a huge frozen lightning bolt in the middle of the map, which is just looks awesome every time you look at it. And there's a whole load of that stuff going on. There were loads of side quests in this one. I don't remember there being quite so many side quests in the first one, but I checked the trophy list, and the trophies weren't so different in number from last time. I think they both sort of bottomed out around sort of the 25, 30 mark, something like that. I did 100% it. I did the first one. I 100% got the platinum. This was all on PlayStation, by the way. And then I did that on the New Game Plus for PS5 and the first one. Then I did that while I played through just the first single play for Ragnarok, which might have been a mistake, which is why I feel that like the second part of the game kind of dips and becomes a little bit slower for me. And I kind of felt like I was grinding a little bit. And I think maybe my mistake was not playing through the story. I should have just played through the story, built up my character a little bit, and then gone back to New Game Plus and tidied up all the tiny bits that like the collectibles and the favors and all the side quests. But I was enjoying it to the point where I kind of felt like, oh no, I want to do those things. But then when I got into them, I was suddenly like, I've been doing this bit for like 3 or 4 hours. I thought it was going to be like an hour, but then it dragged. And then I felt the game was, it's much, much bigger. There's all these different maps to go to. They seem to be, the scale is much bigger than I remember the first one being. But then I looked at my time in the first one versus my time in the second. And my time in the first one was like 120 hours. The time in this one was about 80. Now, I did replay the first one, so it is obviously counting my New Game Plus. But I don't think I played... I don't know. I don't think I ever did a single playthrough at 80 hours. So going through and doing that on this one did feel a little bit of a drag. And by the end of the second act, I was kind of ready for it to wrap up. But I kept powering through, and I kept thinking, oh, maybe I'll just finish the main path. But then I kept getting sidetracked, and there'd be a good mission, then a kind of slightly naff mission. And so that just sort of ping-ponged all along. And then suddenly I'd done like 80% of the game. And I thought, well, I'm probably not going to come. I didn't feel like, I already knew that I wasn't going to come back and do the New Game Plus. So I just thought I'll just kill it in the first playthrough. So yeah, I feel like that might have slowed things down a bit and maybe has had a bit of an impression on my pacing of the game. But other than that, I mean, all of that stuff collectively is very positive, and I think they've done a really good job with the second one. It's always difficult to follow up on something that's been successful, i.e., The Last of Us, really, really excellent. Last of Us 2, slightly polarizing and maybe not people's best game. I enjoyed it, but it's not the first one, and neither is this the first one of God of War. The Ragnarok is it's a good sequel, but I preferred the way they handled the first one, and to repeat that is difficult. So once you've lightning struck, literally, it's hard for it to do it again. And I think they had a really good stab at it. So I think the first one was a 10, if I remember correctly. I gave it 10 out of 10. For this one, it's a 9. I'm afraid it's a 9, which is still an amazing score out of 10. But I can't give it a 10 because I didn't have the same feelings for various boss encounters and moments that were happening in the game that I did in the first one. I genuinely felt happy, sad, upset when I was playing the first one, and various moments happening had a real impact on me. Remember the kind of emotional resonance that was going on. It was really important. In this game, I got a lot less of that. I think it's to do with the fact that there was so much stuff crammed in, so many layers of things going on that I couldn't really focus. And also, anything happening anywhere at any time, with kind of portals opening and doors opening here and there and people disappearing and whatever, means that there was no kind of real feel of like it being as grounded as the first one, which I feel like that was one of the main reasons I like the first one, which is like, I know it's fantasy, it's dark fantasy, etc., but it still felt like a portal wasn't going to pop up here or whatever. There was a little bit of a limitation on that. Whereas with this one, with Ragnarok, they did a lot more of that, which just made me feel like at any point the story could just completely veer off in another direction, which I kind of didn't like as much. Anyway, so because of that, it's 9 out of 10, and I did really enjoy it, and I would recommend you play it. So if you get the opportunity to get into it, I think it's probably free now. I think you can say it's free. If you've got PS Plus, I'm sure you can download it for free. I think it's on the game collection there. If it's not, it shortly will be, I'm sure. I think it came out in 2022. It's taken me this long to get to it, and I knew it would do, because when it first came out, I was chomping at the bit for the second one to come out. When it came out, I started playing it, and I thought, I wasn't really in the mood to do it, and I knew it was going to be a big epic thing. And a lot of my free time, which I don't have a great deal of, was going to go into it. So I thought, I'll just wait to the right moment. And it turns out that was like 3.5 years later. And I managed to avoid spoilers. I thought Kratos was going to die. That was the thing I kept getting. There were hints in the game. Whenever I'd heard people kind of talking about a non-spoilery chat about it, like IGN or whatever, there was always a slight hint that something big happens at the end that means there might not be a third one. And I thought, well, surely that must mean that Kratos dies, and then they're potentially talking about whether or not there should be a third one with Atreus or whatever. But spoilers, he doesn't die. So I'm assuming they're just going to make a third one. So who knows? Hopefully it won't suffer the same kind of overbearing padding that this one felt like it had. I would much rather a game that allowed me to 100% it in 50 hours rather than 80. There was a bit of time wasting, I felt, but especially the Muspelheim trials, those have just got to go. Like, everything else was like so good in terms of finding things and going and finding things and looking at maps you picked up to try and find a rock location that you then found in game. That was all kind of quite intuitive, and you could work it out. It took a minute, but you could do it. But then with the Muspelheim trials, it was just a kind of rinse and repeat of like just waves and waves of enemies. And I just and you have to do 19 of those. I did the initial 6 to get the favor, but then if you want the trophy, you have to do 19. And I mean, it wasn't particularly difficult, but I found it really tedious. So those have got to go. I just don't, it's a place where you can farm stuff, but you don't really need it, because if you're doing everything as you go along, you're going to be OP anyway. But that's it. That's all I've got to say. I hope you like the review. I hope all is good. Everyone's well. Happy 2026 and all that kind of stuff. And until next time, be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Peace out. We gone.